welcome. My name is Nicky Davis and I'm the Adult Services Officer at Clapper.
I'm Kenny Ardman, the Adult Services Coordinator. Together we make up Clapper's Adult Service Delivery Team.
Welcome to this month's Cleft Talk panel discussion brought to you by Clapper's Adult Services project, proudly supported by the VTCT Foundation.
Cleft Talk is your opportunity to learn more about the topics that adults born with a cleft across the UK told us are important to them during the Adult Survey and Roadshow.
We hope that you find our panel discussions both entertaining and informative. Remember that you can keep up with the Adult Services Project online, including watching or listening to this and other panel discussions again at www.clapper.com/adultservicesproject. You can also join the conversation on Facebook at www.facebook.com/groups/ClapperAdults.
This month on the programme, we are discussing friendships and romantic relationships. These are things that you told us are important to you on the survey and in the Roadshow.
Today we hope to provide you some information so that you can make the most of life and relationships with the people who matter the most to you.
It is our pleasure to welcome our wonderful panel guests. We've got Heidi Williamson, Julia Cadogan and Nicola Stock. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
Could you start by please telling us a bit about yourselves and your backgrounds?
Yes, certainly. So I'm Heidi and I work at the Centre for Appearance Research. I'm a senior research fellow and most of my research work involves understanding what the experiences are, positive and negative, of those who have a condition that affects their appearance in some way, and then developing interventions and testing those interventions to support individuals who are struggling.
Wonderful, pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
I'm Julia Cadogan. I'm a clinical psychologist and I'm a member of the South West Cleft Service, which means we cover the whole of the South West region and travel around the region to provide support to families of all ages, so patients may be antenatal mums all the way up to maybe 70 years old, depending on who comes through our doors basically. So that's my job.
Wonderful, and a pleasure to have you on board as well.
So that leaves me.
It does.
So I'm Nicola Stock and I am also a researcher here at the Centre for Appearance Research. And for approximately 9 years now, my work has focused on cleft lip and palate and other craniofacial conditions.
Excellent. Well, a very warm welcome to all of you.
Welcome. Okay, so our first question goes to you, Nicola.
Lucky me.
Yeah. So our relationships with others, be they friendships, family relationships or romantic relationships, are influenced by events that happen to us at an early stage. Can you explain how our child experiences may influence our relationships in adulthood?
Yes, that's a big question to start with. But yeah, certainly. So there's quite a lot of research which suggests that many of these experiences are common to all of us, whether we have a condition such as cleft or not. So things such as our gender, our ethnicity, culture, religion, the opportunities we're exposed to depending on our income or education and so on. Also, we know that having a good relationship with our parents bodes very well for future relationships. And also potentially our experiences of teasing and bullying can have an impact. And the quality of our friendships also can act as a positive buffer towards any negative experiences that we might encounter. And then specifically looking at some research with people born with cleft, we know that other factors might be important too. So some of those could be, for example, how your speech affects how you interact with other people, potentially how your views of your speech and your appearance can affect how confident you feel in social situations, and also how you adjust to the changes that surgery might bring to your appearance or speech as well.
And I'm going to come to the sofa for the next question. Those of you listening to the podcast are missing out on the wonderful scene that we've got going on in here.
It's comfy.
It certainly looks it. A significant number of people reported having experienced instances of bullying in their earlier years. And if we feel that our fingers have been burnt in the past, it could have an impact on our ability to get close to other people. Julia, how can we best support people to cope with bullying and build up confidence to form new relationships?
I think what's very important is, and I've said this in another podcast, that we need to create an atmosphere of accessibility to the psychology part of the cleft services in this country, and I think we do a good job at doing that. so that we're visible, we're in the clinics and people know how to get in touch with us if and when any issues arise in school. Because they've already met us, I think that helps them to feel confident about approaching us, because of course, as we know, seeing a psychologist can have a stigma attached to it, so we try and normalise having psychology around. And I think we're very privileged and very lucky to have that available in the NHS nowadays, because in many services you don't see psychologists unless you go to CAMS and you're referred to CAMS by GPs, etc. So quite difficult to access. So I think being around and visible in clinics helps to create an atmosphere of approachability and so that we can try and nip things in the bud, so that families will ring us and say, because they know me, Julia, I'm struggling, that my child is coming home crying, he or she is being bullied by other children around having a cleft. It might be to do with speech, hearing, appearance, etc. And then we would get proactively involved depending on the extent of the problem. We might go into schools and talk to the staff. We might observe the child in a classroom. We might see the child face to face for a therapy session or several sessions. We might see the parents separately from the child and then together with the rest of the family. It just depends on what the needs are. What's crucial is to encourage the child to speak about what's going on in a very non-judgmental, confidential environment, and to get to the bottom of what's going on, because you always have to try and be impartial in these situations and really gather all the information that you can access, not just from the child but from other sources, particularly teachers. Teaching assistants are very crucial in these situations, because class teachers often have huge classes of 30 children plus, and it's very hard for them to know the minutiae of what's going on when they're not around in the playground, etc. It's often the teaching assistants who know a lot about what's actually going on. Of course, always include the class teacher and the head teacher as well, if possible. So that's how we work, and always, encouraging children to develop social skills and confidence, and talking to them about how they see themselves is very, very crucial, very important, and also about the treatment plans that might be, going on at the time with orthodontic treatment, speech therapy, plans around future surgery to their jaws and noses, which they might be worried about because it's been brought up. Self-conscious about their hearing. Hearing is a big issue for children with clefts, where the palate's affected, and I think is often not really listened to or thought about enough in cleft services in this country. So there's quite a lot of push now to bring that in line with all the other stuff that we do. So, yeah.
And I also think it's important to remember that appearance-related teasing is the most common form of teasing amongst young people. And particularly if you're standing out looking different, it's something unusual, then you're more vulnerable than others. But very often it only takes one or two experiences, negative experiences, to really have a big impact on self-esteem. And often, you might be getting 99 positive comments and only one negative comment, but humans tend to focus on the negative. There's a negative bias. So I think it's making people aware of that, and making them focus on the very positive comments that come from their loved ones and their friends, and focusing on those. So simple techniques might be thinking of 3 positive things you've heard at the end of the day, and to sort of try and balance out some of the negative stuff, as well as Julia says, thinking about why people bully, making sure that bullying is reported and individuals get the support they need. And recognising that bullies are cowards. I mean, they're obviously struggling, most often struggling with their own issues and sense of inadequacies.
That's absolutely right. And I think you're exactly right in that we do tend to focus on the negative rather than all the positive things that have been said to us.
Okay. So this next one's for you, Heidi. So people reported mixed experiences with their friendships. Most people reported being very happy with their friendships, but a proportion of people reported that they didn't have many or any close friends. What would you recommend people do to develop friendships?
I think the key thing is to expose themselves to opportunities to develop friendships. It's very easy when you have a negative experience to withdraw and avoid circumstances which are exposing and that expose you to potentially difficult social situations. So the key thing is to increase your opportunities to meet new people who might share similar interests. So engaging in social activities, maybe taking a friend with you, or a family member, a brother, a cousin, somebody that's trusted, and then working on those positive relationships and using your social skills. So that's non-verbal skills, looking confident, acting confident even if you're not feeling it. Make it till fake it till you make it. And then making sure young people and adults alike really have possibly pre-prepared statements to engage in conversation, something so they feel prepared when they enter something, when they're feeling socially anxious.
Yeah.
Excellent. And Nicola, going to come to you for this next one. Lots of people worry, obviously, about making a positive first impression. And, one example of that would be when turning up to something new for the first time, perhaps a new hobby or something like that. From your professional experience, what would you say to people who are anxious about making a positive first impression?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think Heidi's strategies are spot on, really. So exposing yourself to new opportunities and new people is fantastic. But what if you feel apprehensive about doing that? What can you do? So I think an important thing to say is that it's very natural for people to stereotype. So when we meet someone for the first time, we like to put people in boxes. It simplifies the thinking process for us, But actually what the research shows is that while in the first 20 seconds of meeting a new person, we might be focused on how they look, what they're wearing, maybe their speech, and other kind of obvious cues, what's actually key after this initial period is exactly what Heidi was suggesting. So things like eye contact, do you have a nice smile, are you asking engaging questions? So it's really those kinds of behaviours that people ultimately remember. So it's again, as Heidi said, building on some of those social skills and focusing on those rather than the awkward first stage.
Absolutely.
And I'd also add that, when you've had a bad experience in the past and you're beginning to believe some of the negative comments, your thoughts start to follow that pattern as well, and you develop negative thoughts and negative beliefs about yourself, and in a way people can become hypervigilant and start looking for evidence to confirm the way they feel about themselves and their beliefs. So I think again it's important for people to recognise this as a normal human experience. And to be aware that sometimes they could check their beliefs and their thoughts and make sure that they're not unhelpful, and that they can be, a little bit more open-minded to the positive affirmations that they get from others.
And again, we're biased towards the things that we think confirm our already held view, and are very good at dismissing things that might challenge that view.
Absolutely. And if you're fearful of going into a situation, your body language will show that. And that would, the people that you meet will be equally anxious about meeting you for the first time, so you need to put them at ease sometimes with positive body language, good eye contact, smiling, important.
Which takes practice.
No one can resist a smile.
Okay, this is another one for you, Nicola, but please chip in if anyone has anything else. So a reasonable proportion of people mentioned that they felt too uncomfortable to ask somebody that they liked out on a date because of fear and rejection. As an assumption that the rejection would be due to their appearance, do you think that people are more likely to experience rejection if they have a visible difference?
So I think that unfortunately rejection is probably part, again, of an everyday experience that we all have to go through. I've certainly gone through it myself.
Experienced it.
And then I think there's lots of reasons why that experience might happen. Often it's actually nothing to do with you as a person. It could be down to lots of factors. So. But it's also understandable if people who have a visible difference then have a tendency to blame or focus that experience on their appearance. And unfortunately, I think it is a reality that some people do value appearance more than others, and may reject people on the basis of appearance. You could argue that perhaps it's better not to have those people in your life at all, so maybe that cuts to the chase. But what we do know from the research, which is fascinating, is that appearance is actually not synonymous with success or having a fulfilling relationship or experiencing happiness. So an example could be, I'm sure we can all think of a celebrity or two that maybe objectively is very beautiful, but might not be perhaps very lucky in love, thinking of some of the magazine covers that we see. And then on the flip side, there are many examples of people who are born with conditions that affect their appearance or who acquire a visible difference later on in life due to illness or injury. And they have fantastic careers and long-lasting relationships and lead highly fulfilling lives. So I think we can bust that myth a little bit there.
Heidi, I think one of the most frustrating things, of course, when we like somebody romantically is the not knowing how they feel and wondering what if. What advice would you give to someone in that situation and how to have that conversation?
I would reiterate that these are common concerns for people of all ages, irrespective if you have a condition that affects your appearance. But if you have had a bad experience in the past, or you're self-conscious about your appearance, that could be doubly, it could be worse. And those negative thoughts can dominate and influence the way you behave, and your reticence for experiencing rejection. So you don't want to put yourself forward. I would say that it would be helpful, before you go straight into that question of do you like me, to get to know somebody, to start slowly, build up experiences of spending time together. There's nothing wrong with flirting. It's a good way of using non-verbal skills to get some sense of whether somebody feels the same way that you do. So good eye contact, leaning in, facing forward. If that's reciprocated, then you could move forward to, maybe touching somebody gently on the arm. It's a very personal thing. Again, if somebody reciprocates, then there are indications that they like you, and you might move forward to asking somebody for a drink, or maybe to an event where you have something, a shared interest or something. And I think from that point on, communication skills are essential. So that's about sharing a little bit about yourself, learning about that other person, seeing where the shared interest, values, thoughts are, and then at that point you're getting some information back, and you're maybe in a position of confidence to ask whether you want to, the individual feels romantically inclined towards you, and then you're in a better position to get some information.
Certainly, and I think keeping in the back of your mind all the things we just mentioned about, if you're not getting that answer that you're hoping for, and to not kind of let it shape your future interactions with other people as well.
Absolutely. Rejection is always a possibility, and that's something that we all, risk whenever we're embarking on any sort of relationship. Someone might not like you in the same way that you like them, but I think the thing is not to ruminate on that, and to recognise that, that's the point where you go and seek out all those positive relationships from people who are important to you, your significant others, your friends. Distract from that. Respond to it positively, graciously, because you don't want to, interfere with any potential relationships that you might gain through them. But, people don't always feel the same way that you do, but it doesn't mean that they don't like you or they're judging you based on your appearance.
I think sorry to interject, but I think coping with rejection is something that most of us have to learn, and it takes experience and a few knocks maybe to find your way of coping, and that's very often about identifying people you trust enough to speak to about how you've experienced the most recent rejection, and how to cope with any future attempts to become closer to somebody, and how you deal with that if that didn't go very well. So I think that's something that we all have to learn, and it's it takes practice and confidence, and knowing who you can trust and who you can speak to. I think that's very important.
Definitely. I think one of the things I've found over the years is that everybody you speak to will have a story of rejection of their own that they can share with you as well. It's something that we all as humans have to go through, unfortunately, at some point in some scenario.
Yeah, part of life. Okay, so this question is to all of you. Sadly, one of the realities of life is that you can have that conversation and not get the answer you want. What strategies would you suggest for dealing with that disappointment? Whoever wants to go first with that one.
We've covered that one, haven't we? I think it's a point. It's about accepting that might happen, and responding graciously, and it can be tempting to be angry or disappointed and to reveal that, but respond positively. Accept that somebody doesn't like you in the same way, but don't let that ruin your potential to be a friend with that individual. And again, seek out the positive relationships
Yeah.
in that
Yeah,
short
yeah.
term, and don't ruminate too much, don't overthink, and try and find reasons why you've been rejected. It might just simply be that you're not suitable as a pairing, rather than something to do with your appearance or any other factor that's personal.
Yeah, I think it's
Heidi, I'd like to come to you for this next one.
Mm.
Similarly, someone may approach us and ask us out, and we don't feel the same way about them. That can obviously be particularly tricky if that person's a friend and we don't want to hurt their feelings. What pointers do you have for handling that situation?
Tricky situation, and I would suggest treating that person how you like to be treated in a similar situation. So with respect and compassion and appreciation of their interest in you, but essentially, you want to stay friends, so you want to be respectful and kind in your response. A gentle decline, but reiterating other positive aspects of your relationship and continued enjoyment of that.
Certainly, and I guess the importance of being clear as well as to where you stand as well, to
Yeah.
avoid leading that person on as well. It's quite important.
a number of respondents, Julia, particularly women, reported that they were staying in relationships which could be described as abusive. They said this because they felt that no one else would want them, or they felt they couldn't do any better, or they didn't deserve any better. What would you like to say to those people?
Well, I have come across patients like that through the Cleft service, and obviously safety is our first concern. We make sure the women are safe. It tends to be women. And obviously inform the right people at the right time about, with the consent of the woman. But obviously I always say to people like this who are going through those experiences that although we respect confidentiality, we also have to inform other agencies if we're worried about the safety of the woman. And usually they actually are desperate for help. And because we have close working relationships with our families over many years, and they hopefully know us and trust us, I think we provide a good seedbed for them to be able to feel that they can talk to us, maybe more than other healthcare professionals they're involved with, who they don't see that often. So safety is the first concern, and sharing information as appropriate. And then what I want to do is maybe explore when they feel safe and that they can speak to me about their self-confidence, their self-esteem, the choices they've made or been forced to make in their relationships. And very often when I've talked to women in more depth, once they've spoken to me in more detail, is that there might be a history of very low self-esteem, very low self-confidence, and it may not just be about having a cleft at all. It may be other relationships that have been difficult as they were growing up in the family. Maybe their parents were having a difficult, acrimonious time whilst the children were growing up, and they perhaps weren't parented as they should have been, etc. And that can set a kind of precedence in terms of their own self-esteem and confidence. So, and that's where maybe I can support them and help them to develop more confidence and provide them with information and refer on to agencies who may also be able to do that alongside us. A model of care that we really like is if a woman does need to see somebody like Refuge, which is a very helpful organisation that supports women who've been abused, and also the NHS provides very useful information, and Womankind is another very, very good organisation that can support women. We might work alongside those agencies and provide them with support around cleft-related concerns, because they may be the organisation that needs to see the woman, and then we might come online a bit later on for therapy. So that's how we deal with that situation.
And it's building that trust, isn't it, between you and them, so that they can come and talk to you as well. So that's really good. And
Absolutely.
Now, Nicola, our survey showed that people were meeting prospective partners in a variety of different ways, different places, including online dating, which was becoming reasonably popular. When chatting with matches on dating apps, people often reported being a bit unsure as to what point to disclose the fact that they are born with a cleft. What advice can you give people on this?
Yeah, so I think for this one I'd like to draw on some research from Nick Sharrett at the Centre for Appearance Research, who I think you'll hear from later in another panel discussion as well. And his research really found that different people find success using a variety of different methods. So some, if we're discussing online dating and apps, prefer to use a photo on their profile in which the visible difference is evident, it's obvious, or even state it in their profile description, so that the challenge is more or less dealt with straight away. While others prefer not to disclose their visible difference until a time that they feel more comfortable, perhaps at a later stage. And I think the important thing is there's no right or wrong answer or correct approach. It's really just to find the approach that you feel most comfortable with. Another thing that came out of Nick's research was that actually if people did disclose the visible difference on their dating profile, that they actually found they received less likes and fewer messages and comments, which is a sad reality, I think. But the way that Nick described it was perhaps to see that rejection, not as rejection per se, but as someone who probably isn't that good for you, eliminating themselves from your life rather than seeing it that they're eliminating you from theirs. So effectively they're helping you to filter out the people who are maybe not so suitable for you and cutting straight to the chase.
Definitely avoiding all that time wasting.
Exactly.
That happens all too often, doesn't it?
So this one's to you, Julia. So there's a lot of expectation from others for everyone to be in a relationship. What can parents, families and friends do to support people in their current relationship situation?
Well, I suppose it depends what the current relationship situation is. I think what I've learned from talking to lots of people over the years who have cleft conditions is that sometimes there can be a difficulty in respecting privacy. So maybe parents, best will in the world, might be slightly over-involved in supporting young adults, maybe particularly to take risks, get out there, create opportunities to meet people. And that's, I mean, I'm a parent, I totally understand that, and I've experienced that myself, being quite overprotective at times. But that can be quite, it can actually prevent development. Of course, we have to develop independence. That's what our aims are as parents, to help our young children, and as they grow up into teenagers and young adults, to go out there and take risks. So that's something I'm always slightly aware of, and often because I know the parents from before, as the children were growing up, I sometimes have a sense of that might have been the issue. Of course, the other end of the spectrum is perhaps, you know, not caring enough for the children. And then you can see that as they're developing, that they maybe not looking after themselves as they should be, and they're getting into relationships or situations that may not be healthy for them. So I think it's getting to know the families, getting to know your patients as well as you can, and going from there and providing them the advice that they need.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Nicola, a number of people reported that they had a desire to have a partner, but they were content to take their time to find the right person for them. Can you tell us how you can still make the most of life without having a partner right now?
Yeah, sure. So I guess just drawing on some personal experience, I think it's really about being comfortable with who you are and where you are at in your life. So again, as we've said, engaging in activities you find enjoyable and rewarding, pursuing your own personal goals, and really just putting an emphasis on your own needs, really, so that when a partner or potential partner does come along, it's really a bonus rather than completing something. So it's adding something to your life rather than completing it. And then just drawing on some of the research from the Centre for Appearance Research and some of our colleagues as well, we found that adults who are born with a cleft may take longer to find a partner, but that actually once they do have a relationship, they're much more satisfied with that relationship once they're in it. So I think that's a really encouraging thing, an important point. And some of our qualitative work, so some of the interviews we've done with adults with cleft, they shared that they felt that was because they were more certain of who they are, what they want from a relationship, where their barriers were, boundaries were, and really feeling that they'd found someone who really liked them for who they were, rather than simply how they look.
And I think that's a very good example of a positive experience coming out of living with
Absolutely.
a visible difference.
Absolutely.
Okay. So one of the fears, Heidi, that some people have is the worry that they might lose their friends or their partner. Despite there being no reason to suggest that would happen, can you explain why some people might feel that their relationship are more insecure than they actually are?
We've talked a lot about the risk to people's self-esteem and developing low self-esteem, and I think if people are struggling in that way, they're more likely to experience unhelpful or negative thoughts about maybe how worthless or undeserving they are, or maybe attributing their relationship to good luck or fortune, rather than recognising that individuals have chosen to be with them for all the qualities and strengths that they have. So I think it's important for people to be aware that these feelings, thoughts can get in the way and make you a little bit more suspicious about the quality of your relationship. It's important to recognise that your loved ones are actually with you through choice, and to consider that in a bit more detail.
I think that's really important as well. I think we spoke about it a little bit right at the back at the start of the series in the self-esteem one. That can be really challenging, I think, for partners as well, because obviously they see you as that person that they love, and they understand all the reasons why they chose to be with you. And then if you're not able to recognise that for yourself, that can be really challenging all around, really. Finally, Julia, managing friendships and relationships obviously can be really difficult, as we've discussed. But fortunately, the Cleft team is there to help with this stuff. What support is available from the Cleft team regarding friendships and romantic relationships?
I think it's important to remember that we have, obviously, by definition, a huge variety of different individuals coming to see us at different ages. I think we may be thinking about younger adults very often when we've been talking about things, but we often get, well, not often, but quite a lot of older adults coming back into the service. And I think Nicola Stock, who's here now, has done some really useful research talking to adults of all ages. And I mean, we might see people in their 70s, as I said right at the beginning, coming back into the service, who may have had a long time of struggling with lack of confidence. And when you speak to them in detail, you might find actually they had absolutely no support when they were younger with friendships and relationships. And I think if we did some more exploratory research into this area, we might find that this might correlate with lack of psychological support that was available generally in society, but also more specifically in cleft services, which used to be basically a surgeon and maybe a speech and language therapist, and no other professionals involved particularly. So I think hopefully we're trying to provide a model of care which is preventative and peripatetic, so we're getting in there right from the start when patients come on our pathways, and as I said, normalise the idea of having a psychologist around so that we can react and be proactive if any issues around friendships emerge. So that's the kind of environment that we want to create, and if friendships are an issue for adults, then we would signpost them to the CAPA website, which is brilliant. There's a lot of support there which didn't used to be available, and work alongside CLAPA to enhance those services, and vice versa, which is why we're here today, which is I greatly welcome, and to make sure that we nip things in the bud. I think if you allow friendships to become a big issue and you don't intervene sooner rather than later, then it can be quite difficult to support people. So we try and give them the tools to provide them with the confidence to deal with any issues around friendships and relationships as soon as they can.
Yeah, absolutely right. And it is great to see so much nowadays happening sort of prophylactically within the Cleft teams, and as you mentioned, from a very early age we're thinking about this and keeping an eye on it. But of course, as you also mentioned, for people who are a bit older and have a very different experience with the Cleft team, being aware that these services are now available, and that your past experience of the Cleft team may well not reflect what you would experience nowadays with the benefit of much greater support and much more wraparound care. So we really would encourage people to get in touch with you guys, and full details of the Cleft teams are on our website as well.
Can I just add a point to that as well, Kenny, if that's all right? So one of the really interesting pieces of research we did relatively recently was with adults who were born with a cleft, older adults, who wouldn't have experienced the standard of care that we have now. So they grew up with the old services Julia was describing, but then actually in adulthood they've chosen to then go back to the new Cleft service, and so they've got really good experience of both pre and post changes. And what was really encouraging was that all of the adults we spoke to said they found that the standard and coordination of care had really improved. They felt they were really involved in treatment decisions, and that the inclusion of psychology in particular had really kind of been invaluable to them. So again, just to emphasise, please do go and speak with the Cleft team. You know, it could be a lot better experience than the experience that you might have had. Maybe some memories of prior treatment. You know, things really have changed and improved over the years.
Definitely, I think, you know, a lot like what we were saying with, you know, fear of rejection and not letting those experiences put you off, you know, future experiences. Much can be the same with, you know, historic things that may have happened with the Cleft team. Certainly, do if people have a memory that's perhaps not particularly great, recognising that definitely people have learned from that and times have moved on. So we certainly would encourage people to get in touch. And time certainly has moved on, and that is all we have time for this month on the panel discussion. Thank you very much to you all for joining us, and thank you to you at home for joining us. We hope that you have found this discussion to be informative and useful for you.
And remember that you can always access more information and listen again to this and other panel discussions on our website at www.clapper.com/adult services project.
Starting to sound like a broken record here, but if this discussion has made you want to find out more information on this topic, then please do contact your Cleft team. As I said before, all their information is on our website and they'll be able to support you. We'd also love for you to come and join us at the Adults Conference in Glasgow on Saturday the 14th of September. It promises to be an informative and enjoyable day, and where we touch on many of these topics that have been discussed in the panel discussions and more. You can find out more and secure your place today by visiting our website at www.clapper.com/AC2019.
We'd also like to thank our lovely panellists. We've got Nicola Stock and Heidi Williamson from the Centre for Appearance Research, as well as Julia Cadogan from the Bristol Cleft Team for joining us for today's discussion. As well as a big thank you to you at home for joining us.
And make sure to join us again next month when we will be discussing treatment decision making. So that certainly sounds like it will be an interesting one. But until then, take care. Bye-bye for now.
Bye. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. We want to know what you thought of the programme so that we can make it even better for the next one.
So go ahead and give the video podcast a like, and if you're watching the video, comment below and let us know what you think. If this was interesting, make sure you subscribe to our podcast and videos.
Our next podcast and video is coming up at the end of the month, so check out www.clapper.com/panel discussions to find out what we'll be talking about next. You can also watch this and other panel discussions again on our website.
We want your questions to take to the panel. Visit our panel discussion page on our website to submit your questions.
You can also check out everything we're up to with the Adult Services Project, including a list of our upcoming programmes and events at www.clapper.com/adult services project.
And make sure to also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye for now.
Bye!